Yo guys, I've got a spark which I'm going to use to ignite the fire for a brand new video here on the channel. So naturally, with Skylanders being a franchise that's targeted mostly at kids, it has its fair share of pretty simplistic characters which can be mastered by doing one thing: mashing the primary attack button.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Well, unless it's Boris Adventure or Giants, in which case that is the primary attack button. And now this intro just got awkward, gosh darn it. Before we continue with this video, this is a special occasion, so I've decided to brand it with a watermark I custom made specifically for this very video, and it's of course featuring the flagship character that you can see within the title of the video itself. So naturally, if that's the character you're here for, I am going to wait a while before I start talking about him. So those of you who are here for that part specifically, you can skip ahead to this particular timestamp you see on screen now to get exactly what you came here for, but otherwise you can continue watching the entirety of the video up to that point to gather all sorts of interesting context around it. So now, with that all being said, there is no denying how much fun it can be to go with trigger happy and start annihilating everything in sight by mashing the same button over and over again. The greatest appeal to all this is that literally, and I mean literally, anyone can do it, leading to hours of fun for any audience. However, if there are those rare characters with more complex movesets which demand a string of different attacks to create chains of abilities that ultimately make themselves more effective in combat. In other words, you can't just simply mash the attack button and be all that effective. You have to approach combat with different strategies and be aware of how to link attacks together in order to be successful with these characters. Recently, I've been playing the PS4 game from 2018 known as God of War, a game which takes traditional generic combat style gameplay that we've seen time and time again, and it meshes it with a great deal of innovation to make for a game that truly deserves the Game of the Year awards that it so righteously acquired, mind you. As you work your way through the game's multiple skill trees, you'll unlock all sorts of different combo attacks to tackle combat in different ways. It demands fast reflexes and perfect timing to counter enemy attacks and catch them at the most vulnerable moments. You can fight either barehanded with a Leviathan axe or Chaos Blades. Either one breathes new strategy into the combat, as the blades have a wider range to hit multiple enemies more easily. Barehanded inflicts more stun damage, and the axe can freeze enemies as well as deal the most damage up close and personal. So, how does all this relate back to Skylanders? Well, with Bad Juju, of course, a seriously overlooked sensei with some really unique gameplay, and when it's mastered, it certainly is a force to be reckoned with. Kratos can throw out his axe and then have it returned to him at will. You can use that to throw down your axe and then use its path back to you to hit enemies in the back, creating knockback and stun damage. Bad Juju, likewise, can send out Juju Jr. He deals massive knockback damage when being launched out, and whilst in place, you can summon lightning to him to deal damage to enemies all around Juju Jr. Meanwhile, enemies around Bad Juju herself can be damaged by her blades, which again remind me slightly of the Chaos Blades that Kratos masters. Either way, when enemies get too close to Bad Juju, you can bring back Juju Jr. to your side. Any enemy he attacks on his journey back to you will again be dealt knockback damage, so it's all about guiding Juju Jr. on a route back to you that deals damage both when he's launched out and brought back to you. So keeping all of these moves in mind so you can use them all simultaneously in a chain of attacks with one another is ultimately where the efficiency in Bad Juju's combat comes from, and it's just fun to have to keep in mind all of these different angles, all of these different journeys that Juju Jr. is making, and of course, you know, mastering the ability of using all of these different attack buttons in a specific, combination of sequences in order to effectively deal with the enemies in front of you. And all of these things in combination is truly what makes Bad Juju one of the most complex Skylanders from a moveset standpoint. The only problem with her character is just how overlooked she is, really. Now, her moves demand practice to master, and some players just don't want to put in the time when they could rather take up Taekwondo Crow, mashing his ninja star attacks, and be just as effective in combat as they could as with Bad Juju's entire string of attacks. So why spend all that time memorizing all of these different strategies and combinations and just needing to worry about multiple things at once, when instead you can just hone in on enemies with a single attack that's mashed in for Taekwondo Crow, right? Prism Break unfortunately falls under this same scrutiny where people simply dismiss him before they've had the chance to truly break down and fully appreciate the strategy and concentration his gameplay brings to the table. He's yet another character you can't just use to mash a primary attack button and always win. You need to use all of his attacks in conjunction with one another to be effective when playing as Prism Break. To help analyze this further, I have a special guest. Known for his excellent analysis skills, I bring you the extremely talented and well said Coming Clean Gaming.
Hello everyone, my name is Coming Clean and I have a YouTube channel called Coming Clean Gaming. Thank you so much Ignite the Fire for having me on your channel. It's a pleasure to be here to make an in-depth analysis about the Skylanders moveset. In this video, I'll talk about one specific Skylander from Spyro's Adventure that is clearly a source of controversy within the community. I am of course talking about Prism Break. Why do people's opinions about this character diverge so much, and how can you use him most effectively? Let's find out. Prism Break is an Earth Skylander who rewards a strategic approach to combat and precise spacing. My Prism Break is max level on the Crystallier path, and we are going to take a look at his moveset one move at a time, and then we'll give you my take on how you best can use them together. His main attack shoots a laser from both of his hands that in fact are giant prisms. Out of elemental zones, this move hits enemies for 19 damage. This move has limited range and a long cooldown, and Prism Break is also significantly slowed down when he uses it. I think we right off the bat can pinpoint one of the major problems players have with this character. For many Skylanders, the main attack is your go-to move for most scenarios. Your second and third abilities are mainly used to increase your utility and damage potential if certain situations present themselves. Camo, for example, has an easy to spam effective main attack. If you engage cluster enemies from a bit of a distance though, your best option is to hit them with firecracker vines. The main attack, however, is for most Skylanders your main source for solid, reliable damage. This is not the case for Prism Break, at least not on the Crystallier path. While Spyro and Sap, for example, can shoot balls of fire or energy across the screen while also retaining their momentum, Prism Break's main attack has a short range and also slows him down. The DPS is solid, but not on the same level as many other characters. I think many players have a problem with this. The main attack button that you're so eager to mash simply doesn't get the job done with Prism Break. So what is his main source for damage? We do not have to look further than his secondary attack. With the press of a button, he can summon crystal shards to damage his enemies. Each shard deals 40 damage out of elemental zones. The shards can be used from a safe distance, and each shard can hit multiple opponents, making the damage potential of this move huge under the right circumstances. Hitting a shard with your main attack splits the beam into two. Each split beam deals reduced damage compared to the original one, but since there are two of them now, the accumulated damage increases provided you hit something with each beam. On the Crystallier path, Prism Break drops a total of 3 shards. They are placed in such a way that each split beam from the first shard hits the other 2 shards if you fire your main attack from the same position you dropped the shards in. This creates quite a large area of effect if you use the 2 different attacks in conjunction with each other. Hitting specific targets with your split beams is however relatively tricky, even if you paid a lot of attention during trigonometry class. The outgoing angle is simply too hard to calculate to use the move consistently. Luckily, you rarely have to. The amount of carnage you can create by dropping the shards and sporadically fire beams at them is simply devastating. Prism Break's Soul Gem turns defeated enemies into even more shards, further emphasizing the destruction. All the shards also keep your enemies in place to some extent, which gives you time to maximize the damage you can deal. It's a bit tricky to compare similar attacks from different Skylanders in this game, since how well they work is very dependent on the situation. Camo, however, is often considered to be quite a damage piece in this game, and his double firecracker vines is one of the most devastating moves, and it has about the same type of utility as Prism Break's shards. My guess is actually that the damage potential from Prism Break's shards is actually bigger than that of Camo's vines. The biggest drawback of this move is that it hits at a very specific distance. Enemies that are too close to Prism Break will remain unscathed and you will be wide open to their attacks. Unlocking Prism Break's third move, Crystal Eruption, is therefore essential to reach any sort of success with him, since it's more or less his only way to deal with enemies up close. By using this move, shards are shot out in all directions around Prism Break and they deal about 20 damage. Other similar moves are more powerful in sheer damage numbers, like Spyro's Ground Pound, but Prism Break's Crystal Eruption can be used more frequently and also has one more big advantage. The move will push weaker enemies quite far away from him. Here is where Prism Break's moveset has its synergy. Enemies that are hit with Crystal Eruption are pushed back to the optimal distance for you to use your Crystal Shards on them. The large area effect of both Crystal Eruption and the shards will make this combo potentially devastating, and you can further add to it by hitting the shards with your energy beam. Shard Eruption has a bit of a startup lag for sure, but it's not too bad. In fact, you can react with the move to many of your enemy's slower attacks. A very viable tactic with Prism Break is to start the engagement with your shard attack. Then you use your energy beam on the shards and your enemies until a couple of them are close enough for you to push them away with Crystal Eruption. Immediately drop your shards on them and repeat the process.
Coming Clean Gaming never fails to disappoint when it comes to breakdowns of specific Skylanders. I couldn't have analysed Prism Break better if I had done it myself. What makes this guy even better is his Series 2 counterpart. You can take everything said by his character on behalf of Coming Clean Gaming, but whilst refracting your beam through his crystals, you can send a mega laser down the pathway of his beam, including all the splits you've made through his crystals, and now suddenly all 9 enemies you're targeting with said beam are being dealt 3 times for damage. Since enemies form their own crystals when defeated, this gives you even more refractions of your beam to work with to ultimately deal this large sum of damage to even larger waves of enemies. In other words, anything in front of Prism Break tends to get vaporized. And luckily, Prism Break still has his Crystal Explosion to knock back enemies from all around you whenever they tend to get close, which is the perfect counteract to his lack of agility and being less able even to hit enemies that are both in front and behind you at the same time. But if all comes to shove, you can just simply spam his secondary attack, which has some of the most effective projectile damage that any Skylander could have the hope of dealing. Just look at the annihilation of these enemies in the Chaos Doom challenge right now. Very few Skylanders can ever get close to defeating enemies with this much efficiency. Ever wonder why the Earth Towers you build in the Chaos Doom challenge becomes so powerful? Well, the developers saw the raw power Prism Break's crystal arms possessed, so they simply disembodied them and turned them into the Earth Towers. You know, no big deal, and that would explain as to why those towers are as OP as they are. Prism Break clearly influenced other elements of Skylanders as well. The Earth bases of all of the Skylanders pre-superchargers had these blue crystals embodied within them, and these crystals bear a resounding resemblance to Prism Break's crystals.
Coincidence? I think not!
Plus, the bottom of the traps are the exact same shape as Prism Break's arm thingies, as you can tell thanks to this close-up right here. And to add more hilarity to this whole situation, you can take this Prism Break here and actually place it into the Traptanium portal as if his arm is made of Traptanium in and of itself. No doubt you want to hear about Prism Break's alternate path, but there really isn't anything to talk about. Your beam is gold and deals more damage.
Big deal!
That turns out worthless in the end, since spamming that attack should never be your focus when playing as this character. You can also refract your beam 3 ways through a single crystal, but this is at the expense of the larger crystal explosion, So knocking back enemies that surround you is no longer as easy, and you no longer summon 3 crystals at the same time, which is the most effective way of refracting your beams in the first place. Plus, you don't get the crystal backpack for increased armor, so whenever enemies do get close to Prism Break, his lower armor chance will mean that you're less likely to shield an enemy attack anyway. So them getting up close to you is more of a threat down this path, and overall the crystal path is absolutely the best path to get the job done with Prism Break. It gives you greater crowd control options and makes him harder to be attacked and defeated by enemies. With all that being said, Coming Clean Gaming has one final thing to say before ending off this video right here.
Prism Break has got a few weaknesses. He's got slow movement speed and also limited means of engaging enemies up close. In the end, he's a bit cumbersome to use. He hasn't got that flow that other Skylanders have. But is he more powerful than many players think? I would definitely say so. Thank you so much again to Ignite the Fire for having me on the channel. It's been a pleasure. Ignite the Fire is such a talented content creator himself, and he puts up a lot of time and effort into promoting other SkyTubers channels, which is such an admirable thing to do. Make sure to subscribe to Ignite the Fire if you haven't already. Like I mentioned before, I got an own channel called Coming Clean Gaming, where I put up a lot of Skylanders content, but also content about other games. Please check it out if you feel like it. A link will be in the description. I hope. That's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Coming Clean, and I will see you next time. Take care.
Definitely go check out Coming Clean Gaming's channel. You're really missing out otherwise, because the man is one of the most talented SkyTubers I've ever had the luxury of bear witnessing. His production quality is extremely high as cherry on top of the cake, but you've already seen his skills in analysing gameplay and Skylander specific movesets. So if that alone doesn't convince you to check out Coming Clean Gaming's awesome Skylanders content, I don't know what will. And naturally, this is where the video comes to its conclusion. Now, with that all being said and done, this video is coming to an end, but before that happens, I first want to thank all my Blazing Knights and Scorpion Dragons whose support allow me to continue pumping out quality videos like this one. Without them, this all wouldn't be possible. Therefore, I genuinely appreciate every last one of you from the bottom of my heart. If you enjoyed this video, I have others you can watch by clicking on screen now, and you can even subscribe by pressing the button on the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one, but until that moment arises, peace!